You're right there. Today I'll be watching all of the Resident Evil movies. I love the series. 2 Remake is my favourite. In preparation for 4 remakes release, I thought why not watch all 6 of the movies and give you my thoughts on them. So let's get started with... Quick plot summary for Resident Evil. A group of soldiers go into a lab to try and turn off an AI, but then zombies attack. Now, I know what you're thinking. I love the part in Resident Evil where you go and turn off an AI in a lab. Wait a second. You don't do that in any Resident Evil game. Literally, you could retitle this movie, get rid of the umbrella logos, and get rid of the liquor that pulls up at the end. And this would not be a Resident Evil movie. This would just be a generic zombie movie, just like the TV show.
Mostly just read Zootopia porn, so...
Instead of using one of Resident Evil's many iconic characters, the movie chose to make its own. So meet Alice. She's a pretty generic character with not too much going on for her, so I'm excited to see what she gets up to in the next 5 movies. And because this movie was made in 2002, it's got some great CGI. I actually laughed when the first few zombies were revealed because the effects were just that good. And you know the iconic Resident Evil character, the Licker? Well, it's probably best you see this one for yourself. What the hell was that? It almost looked as bad as the Spawn CGI. The best thing about this movie is obviously the soundtrack, and while it sounds more like something I'd hear in a Doom game than a Resident Evil game, which would rather the music just be your screams, it is still amazing. Marco Beltrami, who did The Quiet Place and the Scream soundtrack, and Marilyn Manson, who did that, worked on it, and I think we can all agree it's pretty good, so pats on the back for them. By the time I'd finished the first Resident Evil movie, I wish a zombie would eat me. This movie is 100 minutes long, and I've really got no idea how they managed to fill this time, because literally nothing happens. It's already been a day, and I can barely remember anything about this movie, so hopefully the second one's got more in store for us. Let's go. Plot summary for Resident Evil Apocalypse. A group of survivors go looking for a scientist's daughter. We're 2 movies in now, and I've pretty much accepted that these movies will have nothing to do with the games. But in this movie, we're actually in Raccoon City, which is pretty cool to see. And at the start of the movie, Jill Valentine shows up and is actually a big part of the movie. Unfortunately, though, there is still no sign of Leon. About halfway through the movie, Nemesis shows up, and I was like... And then he spoke just like he did in the game, and I loved it. While I don't really care for the story in this one, and Alice just really isn't doing it for me still, the amount of references in this one compared to the first one, god damn it, it more than makes up for it. Nemesis, Jill, the dogs, and even some lickers, it's all way better than just having the umbrella logo appear in the corner of the screen every so often. While the CGI on Nemesis and the dogs looks absolutely terrible, at this point I kind of just put up with it because god damn it, it looks really cool. So far, my favourite part of these movies is the Nemesis boxing match. It's so random and unnecessary, it just makes the films go from alright to good. And unfortunately, with this movie, the soundtrack's just been absolutely killed. We went from the last movie having absolute bangers, and now this one just feels really sad and empty, so no pats on the back for this. Overall, Resident Evil Apocalypse is a good step up from the first movie. While it's not too much better, the references are more than enough to please me, so I hope Resident Evil Extinction keeps building on that. Plot summary for Resident Evil Extinction. People drive around a desert for a bit. Yeah, really. They didn't keep building on what Apocalypse was working on. Instead, they did a time jump into the future where the virus has completely taken over. It's set in some big desert and follows a group of survivors featuring Carlos from the second movie and Claire Redfield. That's not Claire, that's Sarah Connor from hit movie Terminator 2. As someone who hasn't seen Mad Max, this film at points looks exactly what I think Mad Max looks like. By the end of Apocalypse, I was quite interested in the cliffhanger about Alice, but then this movie just destroyed what could have been a great payoff for that. This film feels like it's split between 2 different plot points, one being go to Alaska, which I don't know why you'd want to go there because it's a bit cold up there, and then the other one with Alice and something to do with a cure, but because this film's split between these 2 different plots, neither really has a chance to shine. Before we continue, I'd just like to take a quick moment of silence for Mr. X. The best thing about this movie is when Alice turns into Neo from The Matrix and kills a few zombies, but unfortunately there's just not enough of these scenes. This series feels like it's hit the bottom with this film, so hopefully Resident Evil Afterlife should be able to revive it. Let's go see if it can. Plot summary for Resident Evil Afterlife: Alice hunts for survivors from the last movie and escapes a prison. This is the best film in the series so far. I feel like it was really fast paced and had some great action scenes. I've accepted Alice now and I think she's a pretty decent character at this point in the series, so I imagine if I went back and rewatched the other films, I'd like her a lot more. This film has gone full Matrix on us with Alice doing flips off walls, and then at the end of the movie, Wesker literally turns into Neo and dodges bullets. Also, if you look really carefully in the background, you can see Alice just stood there doing nothing. Their big boss character for this film is an original design because we've already killed Nemesis and Tyrant off, and this one, I've got to be honest, it looks really nice. His origin isn't explained and he just shows up, but he does mess with the character's plans and that forces some creative choices. My only problem with him being this scene here.
Let's go!
Resident Evil Afterlife, are you trying to tell me that this 8-foot tall man with a massive axe hammer thing just managed to sneak up on people like that? No, you just don't do that. We're in 2010 now, so the CGI actually looks pretty decent, except for the dogs and when Wesker does that. It's been an hour since I've watched this film and I have no memory of the soundtrack, so either it was really good and blended in or it was so forgetful I wouldn't remember it. Also, just a quick pat on the back for the opening shot of this movie, which, oh my god, looked really nice. This movie was a massive step up from Extinction and was a really fun watch. It answered all my questions from the films before, and then left me with a few which I hope get answered in the next film. One thing I do want to know, though, is where the hell is Jill? I think she's been forgotten. She hasn't been in 2 films now. Is she alright? And hopefully there's some more Wesker in the next film, because, oh my god, he was great in this film. Anyway, on to Retribution. Plot summary for Resident Evil Retribution: Alice escapes an umbrella testing facility. This is the second best for me right now. While at some point you can definitely go numb to constant fight scenes, and I was definitely feeling it by the end of this film, one thing this film was boring. It was constantly coming up with new ideas for each different section of the testing facility. My favourite being the return of the hammer bloke from the last film, but this time, however, there were 2 of them. This film also introduces some classic Resident Evil characters that honestly should have been in the first film. Leon and Ada both make appearances, and while I think they're pretty underused, it was good to see them finally show up. Wesker was also in this film, which was great, but just like Leon and Ada, just didn't have enough screen time. Now, this might scare you a little bit, but this film actually included a good CGI licker. This film also answered my question of where the hell is Jill, which was good to see, and her fight scene with Alice was a really great watch. This film also brought in the Mortal Kombat X-rays. While I don't think this film is as good as Afterlife, it was still a pretty fun film to watch. The build-up at the end for the final chapter was really good, and I'm excited to see how that plays out, hopefully with more Leon and Wesker. Anyway, on to the final chapter. Plot summary for Resident Evil, the final chapter: Alice goes to Raccoon City to stop the T-Virus once and for all.
My disappointment is immeasurable, and my day is ruined.
The final chapter did not meet any of my expectations. After Afterlife and Retribution, I was expecting a pretty nice wrap-up to the series, but no! The last film ended with everyone stood on the White House surrounded by zombies, and you know what I thought? I thought that was one of the coolest things I've ever seen in my life. And then the final chapter opens after this absolutely massive brawl. Everyone's dead except Alice. I mean, Rip, Leon and Jill, they got killed off screen. I kept expecting a flashback, but no, we just never saw it, so we never saw how those characters died. And you know Wesker, arguably one of the coolest things about this series? He gets his leg crushed by a door and dies of blood loss. What a great send-off for a great character. Also, Chris Redfield just leaves the series after Afterlife and doesn't come back for some reason. I don't think it's explained. A lot of characters do this actually, albeit minor ones, but they still do it. I'm getting a bit angry now, so let's take a quick 5-second break to look at pictures of a cute dog. Right, break over, back to Resident Evil, the final chapter. This film felt like it was leaning back into being a horror film at points, which could have worked, but to me at least, the series is so action-focused by this point that it didn't really work, although it did try and it did do it quite well. The ending just didn't feel like a satisfying conclusion to the series, in my opinion. Dr. Isaacs being a clone felt a bit cheap, and honestly so did Alice being a clone as well. Just felt like an easy way out of coming up with an actually decent ending to the series. I feel bad we ended this series quite negatively, but I did enjoy watching all 6 of these films. This series has got some very good highs, but unfortunately also some very low lows. Over the course of the 6 films, I came round to Alice and now think she's actually a pretty decent character. Resident Evil characters you'd expect to be in these films show up eventually, and they're all played really well. However, I feel like the series holds back on how good these characters could have been, but we still got some really good performances out of it. Anyways, that's the end of today's video, so don't forget to like and subscribe, or Tyrant will appear in your bedroom at night. Very spooky. I got links to my Instagram and TikTok down below that you can go check out if you're interested. Have a class day. Boy.